Hey, everybody, this is Kody Bateman. Welcome to a brand new episode of Promptings with Kody B. As you know, we are all things promptings here, teaching about the power of promptings, acting on promptings, sharing appreciation with people in the world, and attracting abundance in your life. That's what this show is all about. Today's guests, two guests, is a couple, and first of all, they're dear friends of mine and incredible servant leaders in the direct sales and network marketing profession. Their names are Garrett and Sylvia McGrath. My goodness, it would take forever to read their bio. This is a couple that has done amazing things in the network marketing profession. Together, they've built organizations of over 150,000 distributors representing 21 different countries. They've served on the corporate side of this business, on the distributor side of the business. They've been on several board of directors of different direct sales organizations. One of the most noted is Garrett is the president of the Association of Network Marketing Professionals. That's ANMP for short, a great nonprofit organization to help educate people on the power of direct sales and network marketing, and his wife serves with him on that board, and they don't make any money at that. That's all just contribution they give of their time, talents, and their leadership to that organization, which has changed the lives of thousands of people. So without further ado, please help me welcome to this show an amazing couple, and we'll bring them on here just shortly. There they are, Garrett and Sylvia McGrath. How are you, my friends?
We are doing brilliantly. It was great to see you last week in person in Dallas, Texas at the DSU. So that was a lot of fun, even though Sylvia was injured.
Yes, still got the injury here.
This is it. We just come off the show. Sylvia walked in and she's got all kinds of contraptions on her, and I told her, I said, you ought to just wear a sign around you that says what happened, because everybody asks you, right?
Exactly, just a little note card. There you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great pleasure to be able to have you on the show right after we were together at a live event. Had the opportunity to see you speak, Garrett, have you speak, and then of course, all the wisdom words came from Sylvia before and afterwards, but but your speech was phenomenal, like it always is. It's interesting, we introduced you in the bio, your involvement, both of your involvement with the ANMP, which, by the way, we're a big supporter of the Association of Network Marketing Professionals, ANMP for short. Anybody in the direct sales space, I highly encourage you to look into the ANMP. It's a nonprofit organization. This couple here is at the head of that, puts a lot of things together. They do a phenomenal show every single year with great speakers. One of the things I love about that is it's everybody's just contributed. It's a nonprofit. Nobody makes any money at it. It's just a whole bunch of leaders coming together to share their knowledge and expertise about success in the profession. So congratulations on your efforts with the ANMP.
Well, it's a grassroots organization, and that's what makes it so fun. Like you said, a 501c6 is a not-for-profit, so I don't get paid as president of the association and chairman, neither does Sylvia. Being on the board, no board members, none of the speakers. So we come together to elevate our profession. And Kody, I want to thank you being the CEO and founder of a company, because, being elected over 10 years ago, you were one of the very first who came on alongside and on board and said, we'll support the event, we'll support you throughout the year. You've been a consistent sponsor every year. Jordan Adler, has been on the board of the association for many, many, many years, always contributing. You guys have got one of the largest groups that are in attendance every single year. So I just want to say, a lot
Shout
of
out to Julie.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people say a lot of things and a lot of things get said, but not a lot sometimes gets done. But by your fruit shall you be known. You guys have been absolutely brilliant. So I just want to know that from Sylvia and I, and from the entire profession, we're just very grateful, and it has not gone unnoticed. Just want to say thank you.
Well, I appreciate very much. We look forward to that every single year, and it's just really good people. In fact, I want to talk about that on the show today. It seems to come up with most of my guests, this concept called servant leadership. Like that maybe it's because I love it and I bring it up all the time. I don't know, but servant leadership to me is a very important aspect of any profession, particularly the direct sales profession that we're all in. Talk to us, because and by the way, to all of our guests, this couple you see on the screen right now is the perfect example of servant leadership, unlike I've seen really with anybody. In fact, in your bio, there's a sentence in the bio that says they are one of the most prolific and influential couples in the network marketing profession today. Whoever wrote that was spot on, because it's true. I mean, you each of you are really good on your own, but man, you're phenomenal together. So just appreciate all your efforts. But let's talk about servant leadership. What does that even mean? What does it mean to you guys?
It's so interesting. I actually started off the talk that I did at the DSU with that very topic. So you were sitting there and you obviously would note that, but I like John C. Maxwell's quote. He says, servant leadership is the willingness to give up so other people will get up. So what are you giving up? So many people have a mistaken identity of what leadership is. They think it's all about all these rights that you suddenly get, but really your rights reduce and your responsibilities go up. In other words, your responsibility to represent whatever it is you're doing well, so your rights to just, sound off emotionally and not, think about the effects you have upon other people. You kind of set your ego aside. So it's not about your agenda and your ego and your promotion. It's about how do you serve and promote other people. It's not about broadcasting more and talking more. It's actually about receiving and listening more and saying, how can I serve you? It's not about walking further down the road. It's about finding ways to walk further down the road in other people's shoes, so you have an understanding of who it is that they are. And that, Sylvia, is something that you and I do all the time, and ask ourselves those questions. How do we serve?
Well, and it's like you said, what are they giving up? They might be giving up of their time, because we hear give up. We say, no, never quit. No, what we mean is give of your time. You're giving up ego. You're giving up, sometimes like the ability to, say, well, I was right about that, and sometimes you're giving up things that are ego driven. And we've often heard ego is edging God out. It's about, how do I see that in somebody else, through somebody else's eyes, in somebody else's shoes? So it's something that we strive for. Nobody's ever perfect at it, for sure. I mean, but it's something that we really feel in you, Kody, and in the organization, and the principles and philosophies and really the values that you've always tried to embody. And I know nobody's perfect at it. I know you would never say that. You're very humble, but we're all trying for that. We're all striving for what that could look like and how that could be, because we know that's how other people can get up. That's how they can do it. They don't do it by you pointing down at them and saying, hey, do this. It's really more about, is there an example of humility and love and listening to that still small voice and that inner feeling of, how can I help others? How can I serve others? What does she need? What does he need? How can I be a conduit for whatever it is that is going to help this other person grow?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that inner voice. That's what this show's all about. That show's all about promptings. Prompting is that intuitive thought to reach out in kindness to another human being and even to yourself. And we all have these promptings, the inner promptings, that inner voice that speaks to you. I love seeing that in children. You know, we have 10 grandchildren now, so we're seeing these grandchildren grow up from infancy up, you know, into toddler stage. It's fascinating to watch these little kids because their inner voice is loud and clear. They know who they are. They come into this world knowing exactly who they are, and they're vibrant, they're excited, they're full of energy. And what's interesting that goes along with a child watching them, they're following their inner voice. Their inner voice is saying, roll over, roll over, roll over, roll over. And they try 1,000 times before they can roll over. And then it says to crawl, and then it says to walk. It never dawns on them to quit. That's the power of prompting, is if you follow that prompting. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
It is, and you talk about children. It's interesting to watch our children's child development, like you just talked about. You know, after they learn to crawl and then they learn to walk. It's interesting when they go through that play process. You know, you have play dates. And first of all, you ever watch children play? And when you first of all put them together, it's side by side play. They're not actually interacting with one another. Then they begin to learn how to interact with one another. And you talk about those promptings. It's how can I serve someone else? And I love the way that you as a company give people a tool to know how can they do that. You know, whether it's sending a card or sending a gift or just reaching out, is have that person know that you were thinking about them. In fact, I have a great example here. This is a card that we received from, I don't know if you can see it, Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan's on here, and
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
if it
great.
worked out, but you know, it says, you know, you know, you've been on my mind. You know, he sent one to Sylvia and I, and that's a, you know, a prompting, you know, that he acted upon and sent it to us, and it's something that out of the blue arrives and it makes you think about that other person, makes you feel good, but also.
No, that was back in September, your birthday. And I
Yes.
still got that sitting out there right on the table. I mean, it's like it's a visual constant reminder, a manifestation of that prompting that Jordan had at one time, you know, or whenever that was, and sent you that. So I think that's such a great example of that, Garrett. That's a visual of the exact thing that we're talking about.
And then you can become better. I mean, I've noticed that, you know, Kody, you are very intentional with us, and you understand what are people's love languages. In other words, how do they receive and express love, you know, within that prompting. And I've noticed how intentional you are, how good you are at communicating with people. So it's not how much love you have for the other person that's always what's so important. It's how much love do they feel. And many times the receiving of a card, the receiving of a gift is the simplest but probably the most effective way of doing that. And then you can add on top of that, and you begin to realize, you get into conversation and you realize there's other things that they love, but it sparks that conversation that lets you into their world. And so often they're going, oh my gosh, Kody, I didn't know you were thinking about things the way I was thinking about it. That is so cool.
It is. Well, listen, that both of you are icons in the direct sales network marketing profession. Probably between the two of you, you've onboarded thousands of people starting in this profession with various companies representing products. So when we talk about a child who, you know, learns to crawl and then learns to walk, then learns to run, you know, over the years, you've onboarded all these people into a business model that they need to learn the fundamentals, which is similar to learning to crawl, to walk, to run. Walk us through that a little bit. And this is a two-part question. One is just kind of walking through that process. And the second part is the most important, is how has that changed? I mean, things, you know, the way we onboarded people 25 or 20 or even 15 years ago is way different than how we onboard people today in the direct sales profession. So wanted both of you to speak to that.
Well, I think it's one of the ones that shift for me was, and you and I even talked about this a lot, was the golden rule. You know, people say you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The challenge with that, though, is you're coming always from your perspective, how you receive love and how you show love. And Other people have slightly different ways that they receive and show it. Like I'm very auditory. So for me to have a conversation, I will receive and give love in that way, but other people might just be very visual. And,
Yes.
Sylvia, as an example, so the writing of a card, the sending of an email might just land with Sylvia with greater weight or importance than a comment.
Right.
So that's something that's important to understand. Or so when you onboard someone, having an understanding, just some basic understandings, how do you best like to receive information? That's a very simple one, that auditory versus
And
visual.
you can ask if you
Yes.
don't know.
Yes.
And because most people don't run around saying I'm auditory
Yes.
or I'm whatever.
Yeah.
You can ask, hey, how do you like to communicate?
Mhm.
One thing that we found in making the switch, when we went into a corporate role after being in the field for, decades and decades, was corporate's all email. Corporate is all, it's in writing. Corporate is you read it. Whereas in the field, a lot of times that's not the case. It might be, a Facebook Messenger. It might be a voice clip on Facebook Messenger that, so there's different, that's one of the new questions that we've asked in the onboarding process that wasn't so important in earlier days. It's become even more important. Like, how do you like to communicate? Some people it's just text. Some people it's they don't like to, they're just pick up the phone. Garrett is pick up the phone guy. But
Yeah.
that might not be somebody that's, I don't know, in their 30s, that's a millennial. So again, it's understanding that that's been one thing that's slightly, it was always important, but it's even more important, I think, nowadays to have that quick conversation as you're getting somebody onboarded.
And another one that we learned, Kody, that really helps as well is that, let's say people are busy. So in connecting with someone, the actual interaction with someone, if it's 5 minutes, sometimes what's better in that 5 minutes is have a 5-minute quick connect and go, how are you doing? Connect around the family. So there's actually a connection in that 5 minutes. And then saying, hey, I know that you had this question. Let me tell you where you can find the answer.
Yes.
And therefore, and the reason is that sometimes what we do is that, well, I've only got 5 minutes, and they use that 5 minutes to only just broadcast something or tell them where to find something. But they forget the importance of the connection first. And if I've got 5 minutes, I used to do that all the time. But what I now know to do better is I'll take the time to listen. Hey, I know we've only got 5 minutes. I'm able to tell you right in a few minutes where to find the information. But first, tell me, how are things going with the family? How are things going here? So don't rush past that. I take the time to connect. And then that last minute going, hey, let me tell you where you can find it. I know you like to receive stuff by email. I'll just email it to you, or I'll send it to you via Messenger. I'll send you a link to get the audio, send you a link where you can look at the video, or send you a link where you can read this. That is one of the other ones that I've found works better, so that we always keep the connection first and that familiarity first, because without it, I feel like people just tend to fall away a little bit.
It's true. We're human beings. I mean,
Yeah.
we all crave, that's one thing that is pretty standard across the board, no matter how you like
we're
to
all
get for
human beings,
information, that we all like connection. We
Yeah,
crave that feeling recognized,
Yes.
and how effective is it to start going blah, 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 blah. And all the person can think about is, my son just, broke his arm or whatever it is. So it's really important, I think, to ask that first. But then part two of it, I want to underscore, this is where you find the information. You're trying to make sure that in that interaction, you're setting people up for success. You're not going to spoon feed them. You're going to say, hey, here's where it is. You're not going to tell them everything, because then they don't feel empowered. They don't feel like the duplication. They don't know where the stuff is. Oh, I got to get Garrett to onboard them every time. I could never remember that. But no, if you just have a, standard, hey, I'm going to send you an email, or I'm going to send you a messenger with, the 3 most important things to do first. And then you got to have that tool. So, as a company or as a team leader, you want to have that tool that says, here's your you're getting started checklist of those things to do.
And
Sounds
so
like
I will
great.
say, can I say one other thing?
And tag them in that or.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one other thing so we onboard people slightly differently depending on what it is that their needs are. So it's interesting, before we would onboard people into your network marketing business because everybody was going to walk down the same path. But that's not the same way I feel in network marketing today. Some people are coming on board and they're going, really, when you ask them the question, what is it that you're looking for? And they go, I really just want a simple way to make some money that's in the few $100 range. And I want to put in a few hours a week. I'm always going to do this spare time, which is when I'm in the nooks and crannies of my day, versus part-time, which is I got some very scheduled part-time throughout the day. And that person doesn't need to know much more than, how do I make money potentially retailing the product? How do I use the groups that will help me to do that and help that, cultivate that customer to be a repeat purchaser who maybe will give you referrals? So that's a difference than saying someone that goes, I want to learn how to build a full-on business with leverage.
Yeah.
If you give the same information to that first person, all of it, they become overwhelmed and they don't even do the first step.
Yeah.
So that's another differentiation that I'm not sure we had when I first started my career. We almost assumed that everybody had pretty big goals and wanted to build a business.
Well, you've given a whole bunch of examples of servant leadership is what it sounds like to me. I mean, just all the examples that you gave, but let's shift a little bit and talk about, in today's world, social media has transformed everything. As we know, it's transformed how everybody communicates, takes in information, builds businesses. I mean, it's really changed a lot about how we do things. And the technologies have created what we call this, okay, I'm going to say it, the gig economy, so so network marketers and direct sellers today are really talking a lot about gig economy. And for those listeners who want to define that, gig economy has anything to do with technology driving your ability to make some money. Perfect example is Uber. If I want to make $300 extra a week, I go drive Uber for 4 hours a night. And I think it was you, Garrett, you and a couple of other speakers talked about how, in fact, you did it in kind of a funny way. You talked about how, when you go to do the work you're going to do and you expect to get paid, when do you expect to get paid today versus maybe 5 years ago? Like today, you got to get paid today. I think, wasn't it you that says, yeah, if I go drive Uber and they'll send me a check 2 weeks from now, am I going to drive for Uber, right?
It has changed. So there's a lot that you've unpacked there, which I think that, first of all, network marketing or multi-level marketing or direct sales, which is that more immediate income aspect of it, I'm not saying was the only game in town, but had far less options were available.
Yes.
Today, people are far more aware of more options, one of which you just mentioned. Well, Airbnb's another one, Etsy's another one, eBay's another one, Amazon's got their affiliate. I mean, I listed out so many of them because they're all pervasive. They're actually promoting into the attention of the people that we're speaking to. So the question becomes, why would they want to do this one? So you got to give your benefits that are different to something else, but we got to realize we also live in an as compared to world. So what makes us different? I think the number one is the community aspect, which leads to we do this together, which is the feeling aspect. Those things are the things that will make it different, because Uber doesn't say, I'm going to get in the car with you and go driving with you. They just go, here's the app, go and do it. So there's very little togetherness. There's very little onboarding to get you over the hurdle, to get your first person in the car. So that can be quite scary. With us, we can go, hey, we'll do this together with you. Now, if that's our advantage, what potentially might be our disadvantage? Or at least we're not as maybe competitive or viewed that way. And that's the speed at which when you do the activity, which is onboard the customer bought the product, when do you receive those revenues or monies? And now most companies have evolved. I jokingly said, if you did, an activity for Uber in October, and the older companies you would have paid November 15th. We've changed that. We've shortened that cycle. In some areas now we pay you in 2 weeks, and some it's 1 week. But there still is that little delay. And you just need to be able to deal with that. So the sooner the person gets paid, the more competitive that you are. And I do think that companies are becoming more sophisticated. They are being open to that. They're bifurcating, they're separating out that initial concept of making money through the direct sell and paying people sooner with it. So you want to simplify it, pay people sooner, but our advantage is we'll do it together with you. Anything else you want to say there?
No, it's sorry.
Yeah,
I was going to say
that's a
something.
pretty good summary there. In fact, I loved your speech, the 3 C's. You talked about community was right in the middle. And then of course, compensation was the third one. And then basically how you get paid, you called it customer
reorder. Yeah,
Yeah.
the customer reorder.
In our company, and just so our listeners are aware, because many listeners come on here different ways. We normally talk personal development and what promptings are all about, how it guides you in your life. But we as a company, Promptings, we use a direct sales model similar to what Sylvia and Garrett are talking about. We use that model to send our products. Now, there's a reason we do that. We've always done that, because we believe in the power of promptings. Prompting is an intuitive thought to reach out in a positive way to other human beings. And what we have learned is that when you act on those promptings, it creates what we call appreciation energy in your life. And when you have appreciation energy working for you, it enlightens your inner voice. It lifts you up. It carries you towards your potential. So your promptings grow. They get bigger. So today's prompting to say thank you to somebody turns into tomorrow's promptings to start a nonprofit philanthropy or whatever. And it takes money to do that. Or today's prompting is to send a gift to somebody in need. Tomorrow's prompting is to fly across the country and show up for somebody that needs your help. Well, it takes money to do that. So we have always had a direct sales model to create an aspect for our affiliates. You can be a customer, but for our affiliates, to have a way to create incremental or extra streams of income so that you can act on the bigger promptings of life. And that's what you guys are all about. You have been, you've been coaching people forever. Sylvia, when we say decades and decades, it just, it doesn't like you, what, did you start when you were 5 or what?
Yes, yes.
Oh, you're very nice. Oh, it's what, 30 years, more than 30 years that you've been in the industry. And for me, it's 25 because I started later. We're the same age. And we just,
I just don't look as good.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant we met through this profession and through this industry. We actually were working at the same company, and yeah, that's a whole other story. But
different prompting.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about community, and I would put right in there with community mission. Community has to do with mission and your cause. We have a big cause at Promptings. We want to help the world to act on their promptings. Let me jump in on
that. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Kody, you've got something that Amazon, Jeff Bezos, I'm not saying it's never going to have, but they're miles away from it right now, which is, if you look at how they work, it's the products and services that go sold through Amazon, they get commoditized, because the reality is it becomes about the lowest price, because they've already said we're going to deliver it in 2 days. And we don't want to be involved in that, because that's the commoditization. That's not where our USP, our unique selling point is, our unique selling proposition, our unique selling prompting is. Because in the end of the day, it's the prompting, it's the community, it's the together, it's this intangible that becomes tangible that makes the difference. Because most people in the end of the day, they don't want to be on their own. There's lots of evidence from the last 2 years that doing things via Zoom, while it is efficient and while it is effective, it's not without its challenges. And people become disconnected and they become, while it has an efficiency to it, it doesn't help their soul. People feel a sense of loneliness. So this concept of promptings are really important because many times those promptings are, you know what, I thought about you. But a thought about someone else in your own mind not acting on it, I'm not saying this, it's not that it just needs to be acted upon.
Yeah.
And we have in the Catholic Church. So I grew up in Catholic Ireland, and we used to go to bed at night, and I used to have asthma, so I used to be fearful of falling asleep. And my mom every night we'd say prayers together. We'd have out loud prayers. And one of the things that they have in the Catholic Church, I don't know if it's big over here, is called the sin of omission. And it's not about a guilt thing. It's a learning thing. So my mom used to say, what were some of the things you thought about doing today that you didn't do? It's called a sin of omission. In other words, you thought about it, like you didn't act upon it. Faith without works instead. So my mom would say, when you pray to God for guidance, in other words, that's your nighttime prayer, you need to be prepared to get up in the morning and move your feet. You need to put it into action. And this is something that I think is really important. How often do we think about someone? And it was put in our mind because that person may be sitting over there feeling lonely, feeling inadequate, thinking that people are not thinking about them. They may have had a situation in their family and they just don't feel like they got someone to speak to, or they may have had a situation at work, or their husband was less than kind and nice to their wife, or a child, or whatever it was, and something could just shift in the world. Somebody else thought about them. It was a positive, appreciative, beautiful energy that kind of got injected into their life and just nudge them or nurture them into a new space. And they came home and they said, hey, honey, you know what? I was thinking about it. You know what? I'm so sorry about the way I left this morning, and when I drove in the car. And it could be because they got a card from you, or they got a call from you, or they got an email from you, and then you just nudged it. You know what? A body in motion tends to stay in motion. If you start off in a negative direction, you can stay in that direction. But that prompting can be that nudge, that little redirection, that little insertion, that little change that made you go, you know what? Things are not as bad in the world. The last thing I'll say on this is, Sean Acord, did this study and said that, we can.
He's the author of The Happiness Advantage.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think they call it the Tetris effect, that if you get your mind in a motion of not appreciating things, that you can then start looking for non-appreciation promptings or non-appreciation evidence in your world, and you start looking at the bad things, and you become a bad finder as opposed to a good finder. But you can be nudged back into the other way as well. And sometimes when we're in that space, we need an outside energy. We need something to come in because we're not listening to our own inner promptings. We need someone else's inner prompting to intercede into our life. And he calls them these little intercessions, these little things that can make a big difference. And you know what? You can be a person that spreads those in the world.
And I think whatever faith you belong to, or if you don't belong to an organized faith organization, I still feel like that everyone can benefit from recognizing that these feelings, these promptings are from a divine source. They're from a good source. And, I was raised differently than Garrett was. And I was raised in the LDS faith. And that was very much a part of how, we were raised, and that you're looking for, and this is not to be about, religion. So I don't want anybody to sort of go tune it out that isn't, of a faith or either of those faiths. It's not about that. It's about going, how can I really be in tune with what is good and be open to receiving it? And then through that, be bold enough to take action. And it's like a muscle. You can exercise and it can become, because I think that sometimes we don't do the things that are on our heart because we're a little bit timid too. We're a little bit, we're lacking that boldness, or we're lacking that courage or bravery we feel like somebody will reject us, or we feel like it'll be stupid, or we'll go, why, or I don't have time to do it. When we're open to the possibility that God, love, all the positive things that are out there that are going to help other people can flow through us, that we can be a conduit for good in the world. And that not only is that possible, but it's actually our job.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of our obligation, that like that would be a really good thing to aspire to. Then we go, wow, I really, that's something that I want to put structures and routines in my life that help me be more of that. If that's something that you believe in, I'm not saying that's everybody, but I would offer to you the possibility that that's a really good way to live your life and to have those values. And I love that you've created a community of people that's their values.
May I say one more thing, Kody? And this is something that came into my mind. You and I were recently listening to, recently the last 2 months, Napoleon Hill. So Napoleon Hill has a master class. I think you can actually listen to it on YouTube, but he talks about in Think and Grow Rich that the universe sends us out an energy, which is many times it's initially thoughts about other people.
Mhm.
And that you should act upon those thoughts. Like you said, they're beginning, the universe will reward what you act upon and send you more of it. And when that person comes to mind, simply just saying you know what, I thought about you, and you reaching out and acting upon that, then what happens is the universe will send you other thoughts or promptings because it's been reaffirmed that you will act upon them. And some of them you don't know what the reciprocity that will come back from it is, but know there always is some form of reciprocity there. And even Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, and he also kind of spoke about the way Sylvia did. He said, regardless of how you hold your faith, or if you don't have a faith, or you feel it's a different type than it is, he said, there is a universal law of nature that of which you act upon, you have a tendency to receive more of it. In other words, you act upon, he says, it's nurturing it. And when you nurture something, it grows. You want to have more of those in your life, because that's where much of the joys of life and the breakthroughs of life can also come from as well. So I love the fact, like Sylvia said, you have created a way for people to do that with ease.
Well, thank you. And one of the things we've learned over the years, because we created a mechanism or a way for people to act on promptings by sending out kindness to others, and typically energy is sent through 5 primary ways. It's through your thoughts, your feelings, your words, your images, and your actions. So thoughts, feelings, words, images, actions. Think about a greeting card. You take your thought and the feeling behind the thought and put it into words on a card. And then you add images to it, pictures, like Jordan had a picture of you guys on there. Those are 4 primary ways. And then the 5th is you got to act. So he's got to push the send button, which sends the card to you. So we initiate all 5 ways to send out appreciation energy by this mechanism. But here's what we learned, and it ties in to what both of you just said. What I didn't realize when I created this mechanism 20 years ago, I probably should have realized it, but it takes me a while to learn stuff. But what I didn't realize is that the more you act, the more promptings you receive. So if you get into the habit of just acting and acting and acting, and now we have a mechanism that makes it easy for you to act. So the more you act, the more promptings come in. I personally believe the promptings are always there. We just don't feel them or see them because there's other stuff going on. But if you have a mechanism where you're acting all the time, your mind is clear to take in the new promptings that come to you. And with that, it guides you to what you're supposed to do, who you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to touch. See, I believe that there's people at certain times in their life that only you can touch. I believe that. I believe there's genius in each person on this screen, and there's genius in each person listening into this podcast today. There's genius in each of you that only you have. Nobody else has some of the unique genius that you have. And your responsibility is to share that with the world. That's what promptings are all about, is they're telling you to share your genius with the world. And you two, my goodness, incredible examples of that. In fact, I want to kind of shift this a little bit because I think this is real important to talk about. When I look through the bio and, you know, people heard it at the beginning of the show, the accomplishments of the two of you, it's almost exhausting. It's like, it's like all of the stuff that you do all the time. You know, you're ahead of this board and you're doing this over here and you're building this business over here and you're doing this. And in the meantime, you go put on an ANMP show. And I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy, the energy that the two of you have. And you've had a lot of success as a result of the energy you put out there. And it's easy for people in the social media world to look at the McGraths and see the success couple, the full of energy couple, help so many people couple, you know, super successful couple. And that's what people see. But people haven't seen the 5-year plus years of hardships that you've been through. Some of us closer to you know about that. Mm-hmm. And I just felt prompted to talk about this today and, you know, just share what you're comfortable with. But you two have been through some real challenges while doing all this cool stuff. And whatever you'd like to share of that, you can. But my main question is how do you go through the trials of life and maintain the level of energy that the two of you do?
Great question.
It is a great question. And that has also evolved for us. You know, being able to tap into gratitude, but that can be very challenging to do when you're faced with a really big challenge. Is a nice word. When you're facing it face to face like that, you sometimes you use different words to describe it, and you might have so much composure. I remember there are many I could point to, but you know, one in our lives when, you know, our son Philip was on heroin. Our daughter Victoria was running away. Our business, as a consequence of our focus being with our family, was also, as it turns out, falling apart. And as a consequence of all of that, you know, we were not making the income we made before, and we were leveraging our credit cards to help get our son into rehab. And Sylvia was also in a situation, this is a period of time whereby she was on bed rest, pregnant with Liam as well. And we had a lot going on in our lives. And I remember one specific moment whereby Sylvia was on bed rest. I just took a phone call from a credit card company. I can even remember the name, but I'm not going to share it here. And they said that your introductory rates that you had borrowed this money had gone now to 23%. And it started what felt like a cascade, which it was, of other cards saying the same thing. Because I said, I kept arguing, but we're paying our minimum payments. And they went, no, it doesn't matter. Your income has gone way down. Your credit rating has gone way down. And I remember leaving where Sylvia was, hanging up that phone, because we had a connection upstairs back in the day when we had landlines. Actually went downstairs to a room that Philip had been staying in. And I remember lying on the bed, putting a pillow over my head and crying. And I wasn't just having one of those ESPN, Gillette tears that these men, so it falls down and just goes down the cleft of their chin, pings off into the distance, and they look all manly and cool, but a little bit like they've got a tender side to them. I was a blubbering mess in the fetal position, crying with both hands like this, and I didn't want Sylvia to see me. And then on top of that pillow where I'm holding on, I could feel Sylvia's hand. And I was so prideful. I remember thinking at that moment, I don't want Sylvia to see me here. But Sylvia was there. So she had that prompting to come down the stairs in a difficult situation, she was in, and she placed her hand upon mine. And I remember looking at her. I mean, I'm talking about a blubbering mess. My blood pressure was being through the roof. I was a combination of embarrassed, angry, sad, and all the things together. And all Sylvia said was, we have, because she knew what was going on, she goes, we have so much to be grateful for. And I remember thinking to myself, almost like saying out loud, what? And she said, our son Philip is in rehab, and we were able to borrow all that money because of all of our previous success. He's going to be there for 6 months, and I believe he's going to come out and he will be fully restored. How many parents that are in the situation that we're in would love for their son to be in rehab? Our daughter Victoria has agreed to come home, and you made a deal with her that I believe she's going to get back on the honor roll list, and she is going to be the daughter, and she's going to have the life that she wants. We are at adults that are going to have a child at 40 years of age. How many parents at our age would love to be able to get pregnant? And the fact that that we don't have insurance to pay for, we're doing in a birthing center, grateful that we're going to be able to make that happen. I believe that our business will be so fully restored, and we're blessed to have the faith and the relationship and the time that we have here. We need to pray and give gratitude for that. And that was one of the most difficult things ever. You can see my face even getting red to do. And I will say, though, it absolutely was able to let me let go of the bitterness, the anger, the disappointment, because you can't build anything positive from that place. And literally was able to get into a place of gratitude. Now, there are times when I really had to hang on to it and work with that, but we create a routine in our lives around making that happen. But I will say this, you cannot build a positive future out of a frustrated present, because that emotion is so strong, it'll keep you attached to the current set of circumstances, and you won't be able to vision and move positively and attract other people into a new future. And I can say that was one example.
And it holds true in, I can't think of a situation that it doesn't hold true in. There is always something to be grateful for. And Kody, I can't remember what you called it toward the beginning of this, conversation. But that spirit of gratitude, of appreciation, so much good can come from it. And when things feel dark or feel like they're closing around you or feel like you're stuck, I mean, gratitude is like, it's a starting point. It's a springboard for you being able to have all of the other energy and spirit and focus and good things happening around you. When you're just focused on what's wrong, and sometimes it's hard to find, you really got to dig. But when you can do that, and you can always do that because you're alive, there are so many good things that we can point to in our lives, in our relationships, in just life itself, that can bring you out of that space. No matter, I mean, I challenge you next time, if you're listening to this going, but you don't get my circumstances, there's always something to look for. That is a gratitude springboard to take you out of that and into the next thing. But sometimes you got to reset it like daily, sometimes multiple times a day, depending on what's going on and how, challenging things are in that moment. I mean, I know another time that, and this is much more recent, we really did get through that situation. I mean, we had a healthy, you saw Liam, baby boy, that was 15 years ago. He was almost 11 pounds, but we had him at a birthing center, and no drugs or anything like that. And he was healthy. It all came through. And then with Philip, I mean, he came through. He's clean. He's a good person. He gives back. He loves to help people who were in his spot. So you just never know.
Our daughter the same way, great career, or we've got a great business. I mean, we feel absolutely compelled to help other people. That's why Sylvia said we've had others.
Blessed.
let me share one thing, because I think it's important, because you and I talked about this. Sometimes the challenge, Kody, is that people look at this as a soft skill. It's kind of a feeling thing. It's a spiritual thing. And there are some people on here who still can't connect with it.
Just give me the facts. Just give me this.
Scientifically, there's a thing. It's called you can look at. It's called one event learning. In other words, it's the precursor to the idea of PTSD. In other words, post-traumatic stress syndrome. In other words, a single event has people stuck in a pattern that they can't get out of.
Yeah.
And the reason they get stuck there is the visual imagery of it so startling, it's seared into their mind. But added to it is the incredible emotional context to the event that's seared in their mind. And therefore they keep repeating it, so they can't get away from it. And the strongest element of that is the emotional piece. And that's why you teach people to create a new compelling vision, which most people start with. And okay, I know what it is I want to create, but they don't understand that they've got to put themselves there and receive the emotion that they will feel in that future event in this present moment, because you have to exchange frustration for gratitude.
It's like the opposite of PTSD on purpose.
Yeah, you're literally exchanging. In other words, you're looking back, you're creating a new memory, albeit a future experience, but you're replacing with appreciation and gratitude. So you're literally putting yourself out there with this new vision, and you're going, I'm going to feel so appreciative, feel so grateful. When I tell my children about this in the future, I'm going to be telling them that the difference maker was I literally felt happy. I was grateful. My default setting was gratitude. And you feel it. I mean, literally exchange that feeling, and you can see it in me. When you can do that, you literally can change any aspect of your life. And the fact that you guys have a tool, because one of the best way to bring appreciation and gratitude into your life, if you can't do it for yourself only, is people find it easier to do it for other people. So if you're having a hard time going, how do I bring gratitude and appreciation into my life now? Because it literally needs to be that dramatic. So you have a new day. What if you create a new day pattern in your day? And every day you said, I'm going to have a feelings of gratitude, like I said, the exercise, and then take action on it. I open up my app with, promptings, and I go, I'm going to send out a card, send out a gift, do whatever it is that action is. That can set you on a new path. And if you do that enough times, guys, 1% better. Kody saw me do this training, 1% better every day. I promise you, everybody here can get 1% better every day. And I'm, the example I gave with David Brailsford, who became the coach to the British cycling team back in 2003. Now understand, in 110 years, they had won 1 gold medal in cycling. They had the worst record in cycling, so bad that the top manufacturers of the cycling equipment in the world today said, you cannot buy our bikes, you cannot buy our saddles, you cannot wear our equipment. Why? We don't want your record associated with our equipment. That's how bad it was. And in 2003, he said, if we can just get 1% better in some of the areas that would be expected and some of the areas that are not expected, we can do well. And that's marginal gains. Well, in 2007 to 2017, that's 10 years, they created a new record. How many of you want a new 10 years? Not just 1 year, a new 10 years. What did they do? They won 5 Tour de France's. That's the #1 cycling event in the entire world. They won over 60 gold medals and over 170 world championships. In fact, they created the #1 winningest streak in cycling ever in a 10-year period of time, from 1%.
Incredible.
And guys, everybody,
story.
it is an incredible story. You can look it up yourself.
And it gives you hope. Because I don't have to get like 1,000% better or 10x myself, and because I know people talk about it. You got to go 10x. Some people saying you got to go 100x. Like most of us are going, how would I do that?
little increments,
1% better.
consistently every day.
Marginal gains, because didn't you say that's your superpower? We teach people how to be consistent.
Yeah.
And in that presentation you saw, I showed that marginal gains graph. You get 1% better every day. That's almost 40 times better at the end of a year.
Compound effect.
Compound
Yeah.
effect. You do
Compound
that in
effect.
gratitude, and gratitude is a cornerstone emotion,
Mhm.
because it's not only changes how you feel, it's one of those action emotions, gratitude and appreciation side by side with one another.
Yeah.
It can make a massive difference. And you can hear my passion for this, because Kody, I believe this. I believe the spirit of intent, the very prompting that's on your heart, the very reason that you're together. I know you very well. I know Jordan very well. So does Sylvia. And I know your heart, guys. Those of you that are going, this is a sales pitch. I promise you there's an element of sales, of course, because I would like to change your mind and we're all in sales. But understand the spirit of intent from which is coming from with Kody and Jordan, the founders of this company. They truly do want to have a positive impact in the world. And there is no doubt that appreciation, gratitude, compounding through your life will change your life. And then when it ripples out into other people's lives, we can literally change the world. That I know is what Kody's all about and why this company is happening here. And that may sound big and lofty, but you know what? It starts, as Margaret Mead said, never underestimate the power of a committed few to change the world. There's more than a committed few here. And this is something that you could commit to and you could do on a daily basis. And it would be fun to see where your life would be in a year from now.
Well, thank you so much for all of the kind words, and just can't express enough how much we appreciate both of you. I got to tell you, this probably will go down as the easiest interview I've ever done. It's in fact, it's funny. I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day about, we're learning the whole podcast approach and the best way to host podcasts and all that. And it's important that in a podcast show that you initiate conversation between two people. That's the whole notion of a podcast, is a host is asking questions and then the two people are feeding off of each other. So you got to keep kind of an equal ground of that going. What was cool here is that we had me as the host, but two of you, I would put something out there and then the two of you would feed off of each other. So I just kind of sat back and enjoyed the show. So it was awesome. I appreciate you so much. And I'm sure all of our listeners do as well. You guys are great.
You make it simple, Kody, because it just comes from you. It's who you are. It's not like figuring out a script this is how you live your life. And I feel like it's how we try to, when you started it out with servant leadership, that's part of what we believe in.
Yeah.
And, as I said, none of us are ever perfect in our execution. But when you're striving for that, when you're striving to serve others, you can see how much of a difference it can make in so many other lives, but I think mostly in your own life. If that's the way that you can approach the world, I'm going to listen to these promptings. I'm going to be brave when I feel the prompting, hear the prompting, experience that. I'm going to do something about it. When you can live your life that way, the giver, I think, gets as much, sometimes more than the receiver.
For sure.
And it's such a win-win, beautiful, like virtuous cycle of goodness in the world and people being good to one another. But sometimes it takes that first sort of, having the courage to act on what you feel. And before that, being open to, there are promptings. There are things I feel that God wants you to do with your life. And there are things that are only there for you to do. As Kody said, there are certain things that you're meant to do that are your destiny.
Yeah.
You're meant to help, whether it's a group of people or your family or some other person. You don't know the doors that could unlock generationally. And you're part of that legacy. You play some part in that because you listened and you heeded the call and you actually did something about it. Because as Garrett said, it's the book of Acts. It's not the book of good intentions or, yeah, I thought about it, but I never did anything. It's really is, can we make love a verb? Can we do love at scale? Can we put loving thoughts, good thoughts into action to serve our fellow man? And, through that, honor God,
Well,
whatever it is that you believe in.
You are two of the very best at doing exactly that. Thank you so much for being on this show with us today. You've brought so many golden nuggets to our listeners. We appreciate you so much. And again, that's I love sharing you two as an ideal example of servant leadership. You showed it on the call today. You guys called me early today and says, okay, I want to make sure that we deliver, and you're all here. You're 100% engaged in this, and we appreciate you so much for it. We all have a lot to learn from both of you. So there you have it, folks. We have Garrett and Sylvia McGrath, two of the best in the entire world. Love you dearly. Wish you the very best in all of your endeavors, and hope to see you all again on another podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.
God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kody.